Want to give you an overview of a tool called Notebook LM. So you can go here by going to notebooklm.google.com. So this is a Google tool that you as adults have access to. Students do not have access to this on their education account. But what this does is it's an AI notebook for you to where you can put in sources and then chat about these sources to create notes and things like that. So I'm in a new notebook. I could add a variety of sources here, such as any uploaded file right here. You could see some supported file types right here. I could share my docs and slides that I might already have, a link to a website or a YouTube video. It's only going to be able to pull the transcript from a YouTube video, and I could just paste in some text here as well. The other option I have is that I can also discover sources. So I could put a few sources in there and then discover some as well. So for example, I'm going to do polio, and it's going to give me a variety of sources about that from different things that we would deem mostly like accurate information and credible sources right here. And I can select which ones I want on here. So for example, like if I did not want a source that had Wikipedia, I could deselect that. I'm going to import these sources, and they're all going to live right here. Now, here's a few things that I can do with Notebook LM. Is that I could just kind of let it do its thing here, but I can start chatting with it to ask some questions about this. So right now it's building out the summary. I can do a mind map where it's going to give me kind of a map of the different topics that all these sources go over, and I could chat with it right here. So it gives me some things to start with. So like, how is the understanding and impact of polio? Well, let's click it. Okay, so that's the question. It's going to pull from these sources over here and give me kind of an answer that's going to. Okay, so we go right here, and you can see that it's telling me where it got this information from, which source it used to find this information. So we could take that, right, and it's pretty. You think we have all these sources. It's pretty detailed right there, and I could save this as a note so that I can access that later or share that with students. And I could continue asking my own questions right here, but I'm just going to stop with that one note right there. Some other things that you could do are you can create some of these things, such as a study guide, a briefing doc, a frequently asked question, or a timeline, and it's going to generate these based on these sources right here. I could also add my own note to here. So if there were some things that I was reading about that I wanted to add in here as well, I could do that. So some things that you might do with this, right, is that we have these sources. You might have this study guide, and maybe these are some key concepts that you're like, okay, yeah, I like this stuff right here. Maybe these are things that you give to students in order to have them study based off these sources. I can also have a timeline. So this kind of gives me some of the main events of when different things happened with polio. So I could share that out with students, and frequently asked questions. Okay, maybe that's something I want to provide students as well. Okay, and then this briefing document, kind of talking about just these sources in general. So more of a summary right here. Now, the other thing that I really like about Notebook LM is that you can have this deep dive conversation. And what this means is that it is going to generate a podcast style discussion about these. And I can customize this as well. So I can customize it saying like I want you to talk about this through a Christian lens using the creation, fall, redemption, restoration framework. I could say this is geared towards seventh grade students. I want it to be less than 10 minutes in length. Okay. And so I could do that, and that's going to generate this audio conversation. And we'll listen to it in a moment. But what you could do with this conversation is you could download this as well, and then post it on Google Classroom or another way that you want to share it with students. So, this type of audio overview could be a good way to summarize some information. It could also be a good way to, let's say, you're going to have a substitute for a lesson and you want kind of like some good quality discussion to go on. You can prepare this in advance. I'm going to pause right here as we wait for this to load. All right, my podcast is loaded. I'm going to
Welcome to the deep dive.
kind of hear.
Today, we're looking at the story of polio in a really interesting way. We're going to think about it through a Christian lens, using the ideas of creation, fall, redemption, and restoration.
Yeah.
So it's not just about the disease, but how it sort of fits into a bigger story about the world.
Okay.
Our mission today is really to understand polio and our response to it using this framework. And, we're aiming to make it clear and engaging, kind of like we're explaining it to someone maybe in 7th grade.
It's a fascinating angle, definitely. It can really help you see a familiar topic like polio in.
So, what you're going to see just in that beginning, it's kind of an introduction, right? This would be kind of an introduction of what a podcast would do. As we get into it a little bit later, it's going to start talking about some of these things. So, I'm going to play a little bit more here.
People who couldn't breathe on their own had to live in these huge machines that would basically breathe for them.
It's hard to imagine.
Yeah, and there's this powerful story about a man named Barton Hebert. He got polio, paralyzed from the waist up, had to use an iron lung, but incredibly, he still earned a finance degree, had a career.
Wow. That's resilience.
It really shows both the, devastating impact of the disease and the amazing resilience of the human spirit.
What's fascinating here, too, is to connect this to the bigger picture of the fall. The spread of the poliovirus itself was often linked to things like a lack of clean water and good sanitation. Some of the CDC.
So as we look at that, we can start to see that they're going to help make some of those connections as well. One thing that you can do, as maybe you're listening to this with students after you've previewed everything, of course, but we can go into an interactive mode in which we're joining right here. So we are joining in on the conversation right here. Okay, so
Welcome to the deep dive.
they're speaking.
Today, we're looking at the story of
We're at
polio
the beginning here.
a really
And I
interesting
can
way.
join in.
Hey there, how can we help?
Can you tell me a famous story about polio?
Oh, absolutely. There are so many stories, but one that really sticks out is about President Franklin D. Roosevelt.
A very significant figure.
Exactly. He
All right, so
contracted
now
polio in 1921,
we're
and it left.
jumping in to this conversation and we're kind of changing it up. So you think about working at this live with students. They can be, they have questions as things come up, and we can just pop those questions in, let them ask, and kind of let them spark their curiosity that, hey, I can ask a question, and we can kind of insert it here and talk about some things and then continue on. So remember, this is a tool for you to use as a teacher. Students do not have access to this, as this is limited to 18 plus, but there's a lot of really cool things that you could do with it. For example, you think of some of these audio overviews. A lot of times we can process more information when we're listening rather than reading, especially for struggling readers, giving them the ability to listen to summaries about things, whether that's to summarize what they've learned or to get this summary before they go in and they build that background knowledge. So before you are teaching about a topic, perhaps you've used this to kind of give a summary that will lead into it. Students are able to listen in a variety of ways, right? And they can listen on their devices at home, in the car, anything like that. So I would love to know how you might use Notebook LM for your lessons, for your classroom, or even for your own personal learning.